Molly, I'm a food addict. A gray sheeter. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day. Ask Cambridge gray sheet, write it down, commit it to my sponsor, eat what I commit and nothing in between, and put abstinence first, no matter what. And man, there's so much I'm uncertain about, but this design that we live gives me a security that just keeps me like hanging on, hanging in. I'm like, well, I'm gonna do 3 meals. I've got this magnet on my fridge. I got it at the New York Roundup like 15 years ago or something. And actually, the lady that I stayed with gave it to me. I think I can't remember now, but anyway, it says 301, 3 meals a day, nothing in between, one day at a time. And I joke with sometimes with because I don't know about you guys, but I've had gray sheets stolen off my refrigerator. I've had guests literally steal that damn gray sheet. And that's only because, I entertain, like I never entertained before I was abstinent. I couldn't organize a shoebox. Like the disarray in my life was so crazy. And I don't know, not for a long time, but before COVID, for sure, I was like entertaining a lot. And I don't know, friends of friends of friends. I don't know, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I was thinking it's been a long time since I actually like talked about like how I was, like the little girl who learned to turn to food, like what that story was. Like I rarely talk about it because to me it's just part of the mess and it's not why I ate. You know what I mean? It led up to me being ripping and ready to roll, to meet some emotional needs eating. And, which emotional needs were, pining for some help, like to me really doesn't matter. But the background was, chef dad, hippie granola mom, a horrible divorce, connecting with dad meant visiting him at work, the holy shrine, and he'd have 22 saucepans going and you couldn't talk to him until he had it just right, and like all of his staff like worshiped him. And my little sister and I, from, we were Mike's kid girls and they spoiled it. They spoiled us crazy with food. And, we got old enough or close enough to our teen years where we were just eating like the diet plates. My dad is like cracking out world famous things that people drove hundreds of miles to have, cow done a certain way. And, we're eating, diet plates. And anyway, they divorced and he abandoned us for about 5 years. And, we were eating out of, the 20-pound jars of USRDA, free food for poor people. We were figuring out how to make binge food until my mom remarried. And then we were in the Addams family. And my firstborn status was displaced into the middle child role. In other words, I disappeared. And I found ways to get my needs met outside of my family. And, the food was, nuts. I mean, I don't know how many cute little stories from beating the pulp out of a neighborhood girl because she had snuck into my house early morning and made off with the, Florida fruit. I got in trouble for beating her up. I went to her house and pulled her out of her house and beat her up for stealing out of my house. And, we were in a good neighborhood in San Diego. My parents, retired on the sale of that house. But anyway, and like climbing the counters and finding the stash, and all the sneak eating and the stashes and the guarding of your food because you have big brothers trying to steal your plate, and the silence and anxiety at meals because that was back when I saw this great picture of like a in utero uterus, and it says, back when my daughter would eat anything I made for her for dinner. I can relate to that. Like, when I was a kid, it didn't matter if you liked it or not. Anyway, she did, she was trying to do healthy, and we thought we were poor. What they were was they were packing for their retirement, and they retired very well and very wealthy, and we all thought we were poor. So I don't know, there were a lot of weird parts of my childhood, and the developing relationships as adults that we've had, we all fill in some unusual blanks for each other, and we all walked away with different kinds of disabilities and trauma events, and most of us didn't know about the other person's experience. It was a bizarre family. And so anyway, what I did was, I used food to treat the coyote loneliness and despair of feeling like I wasn't loved enough, wanted, mattering, important, supported. I just felt like a loss. And the food made me feel okay for a second, but it didn't give me any hope or any false illusions, So that was followed by promiscuity and mind and mood altering substances that I drove to the gates of hell and found recovery when I was 20 in NA. And, when I found recently through my deeper layers of decluttering and letting shit go, I found the gym card of the gym I joined when I got clean off drugs. In my mind, it was probably, that summer, it was March, I got clean. And I looked at the date on that gym membership card. It was literally the next week. It was the next week. I was barely crawling down the street, but somehow I knew, like I definitely used the drug. My drugs of choices were ones that created a loss of hunger, and I liked my face numb, and this hand to mouth oral thing is real, and this COVID thing can suck me because I'm like an itcher. I'm a picker. Like hand to face is like really hard to like restrain for me. And, my sister has it too. I have super heightened smell sensitivity. I don't know what it is with this. I don't know if I was like, someone took my binky, but, and then, on the other side of drug abstinence and food abstinence, putting down, some compulsive relationship habits and into the food recovery, picked up smoking. And so now I'm on the other side of putting nicotine down over a year ago, and I'm chewing gum like a linebacker, like it's like it's my first month abstinent again. And I hate it. I hate how it looks. I have bad teeth, but I don't care. I am not gonna have any nicotine, and I'm chewing like there's no tomorrow, and just no matter what, it's never been my thing. It's safe as far as my sponsor's concerned, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like as much freedom as I've had when I didn't, have it going all day. And so anyway, I got abstinent in 2005. That's the last day one I had. I had a few, attempts to lift off before I knew what, without a frickin' exception, without any exception, we do this. Like it, I didn't know, no. And that absolutely no independent decisions were made by me. You know, that was such a bizarre thing to like make a phone call to an unknown face to decide for me what I was going to do that was right in front of me. Like, and I had a lot of shame about that. I couldn't function in this area. I was like, I had been like a competitive athlete, and, you know, I trained people. I could make them into athletes, but I could not stop what happened to me when that allergic substance was in me. Instantly, it just started planning obsessively what I was going to do next. It was like, boom, it was like a racehorse out the chute, you know, and it was not, I was going to go all the way around. There was no, okay, we'll just have the bell. No. And, you know, me having any kind of carbohydrate or smart grain for breakfast meant by 3 or 4 p.m., I would be driving through or mini marting something. I couldn't not do it. And, you know, what rang the bell, you know, there was a switch that flipped, and I know exactly when it happened, because I used to be able to swear off for a weekend. I used to be able to swear off to see 10 pounds go down for an event. But when I was eating, because I thought my infant in utero baby was going to die week in, week out, I used food like a sledgehammer on my fear. I didn't have a big enough higher power to take care of that fear and manage my food intake. And, you know, I'd like to say I would manage to come up with one big enough. I'm glad I had the food to turn to. Let me just say that, because I was afraid how I was going to get through 10 minutes. And, you know, so she lived. I got a miracle baby, but I never ate the same after that. I couldn't stop when I wanted to stop. I couldn't keep anything that I committed to. My decisions were over. It owned my ass, and I couldn't do any better than that. And eventually, you know, I moved to this island where, you know, there was a GreySheeter over here. Well, eventually she was a GreySheeter. She found GreySheet about the same time I did. And, you know, in the rooms, there's a lot of, you know, it's not well People's Anonymous in there, and she was not well. And as she got abstinent, she got quiet. She stopped over functioning. She stopped pushing literature on everyone. She stopped taking every service commitment in the room. She stopped waving her finger about what you need to do. And that was astounding, like the outward change. And at the same time, her body, which had been larger than mine, whittled down to like a size 4. She was sitting next to me in a chair, and I got fixated on the curve of her hip and waist. I was like, that couldn't be her. That couldn't be her. She was literally bigger than me like 6 months ago. How is this even possible? And I continued to try, and, you know, I had this spiritual experience doing a 5th step, and I could suddenly, in slow motion, microscopically, acutely aware, as my hand lifted to my face for every single bite, I knew what I was doing with that food. I was trying to keep this distance from a higher power, from humans, from my own experience of life. It was like this. It was like this. And I couldn't stop it. Even though, you know, I had abandoned myself in this grace. And I was like, I need to have a plug in the jug equivalent for the food, because I'm done here. Like, and there was another question that came up in my consciousness in a meditation one day, which is, at what weight, Molly, are you going to admit defeat? At what weight? Because every month it was going higher and higher and higher and higher. You know, it certainly was never going down. And so I'm grateful today, once in a while, when I have a stay the same. And I have to remind myself, do you remember what it took to have a stay the same month? It took a lot, 3,700 calories, baby, that didn't happen in my face, you know? And so anyway, I don't know, I'm kind of, I feel a little bit, okay, thanks. 5, thanks. You know, I don't know. It's been such a journey, the Gray Sheet journey. And I'm, you know, thank God for the trust and compatibility and commitment that I have with my sponsor. I can tell you that sponsorship relationship to me is like, that has been just mind blowing. It has changed me as a human, not just as a woman, not just as a woman who can have relationships with other women, or to mother, like her unconditional love, you know, and I let her say the hard to say to Molly things. And there's been periods where I'm like, man, is she freaking out there? And I'm like, just call her at the same time tomorrow. She'll come back around, you know? And I mean, it goes both ways is what I'm saying. And that helps me because I sponsor some women as well and feel that, what am I doing? Like, I don't have my shit together at all. I should probably let them find someone strong, you know, or more on task, spiritually. And, so I don't know. I do mostly serve NA, and there was 10 years of a lot for Gray Sheet, and my sponsor always wanted me in group level service, and you know, I'm kind of struggling in service right now, and I know in service is in giving is where the freedom has come for me, and I'll never not have tons. I mean, I have more service commitments right now than I ever have in my entire life, ever. And it doesn't feel like a lot. It does not feel like a lot for Gray Sheet right now. And without the Gray Sheet abstinence, I've got nothing. But like right now, I'm learning a lot about the program, because I'm in a fellowship that was also borrowed from AA, that has made its mistakes, has realigned with the principles suggested, not required, suggested, and it's come back around, and the unity is astounding, and you know, the freedom that the program allows me. I want the program to be as inclusive and welcoming for the shit show members like myself that came in here. And I can tell you, when you got to soldier up and have your hands crossed on time and behave to the extent we ask new members sometimes to behave, I do not experience it as a welcoming atmosphere of recovery for a new person. Great for an academic with a second, you know, that's my opinion. And, you know, I want to help the newcomer any way I can. And when I'm not, I really do want to trust that the group and the spirituality of the group conscience and the atmosphere of recovery in the room, where you can feel like you can bring anything to the room. You don't have to have your act together. You can occasionally, you know, thank you, Stacey. You know, I don't know. I'm an imperfect member, and I want the video platform to be welcoming, and you know, I just think that the security doesn't match the risk, and that's an opinion. And I'm enjoying the inclusiveness of the groups I have found, where there's no moral issue of turning your damn video off because you have children or an interruption or a meal or a husband or the other things we get to have abstinently. And I'm grateful to live in a house that has a lot going on, even in COVID. And I'm grateful for the friendships and the leadership and the guidance and the imperfection that I hear and share in the room. And thank you for asking me. And I'll turn it back over to you, Risa.